Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Aligned Sacred Alchemy podcast. I'm your host, Rasprit Sagu. Now, if you've ever done any kind of self-development or healing work, you've probably come across people telling you to stay positive, think good thoughts, good vibes only, reach for the highest vibration, all of that jazz, right? And maybe it worked for a while until it didn't. So if you're feeling stuck, exhausted, or wondering why none of it actually works when life gets messy and when you hit challenge after challenge, and no matter how positive you are, no matter how many gratitude journals you've filled, or how much inner work you've done to change your mindset, reframe your money story, or all the rest of it, then stick around. Because in this episode, we're going to be breaking down why positive thinking isn't the medicine you've been sold, and what actually creates the lasting and sustainable healing. We're going to be talking about emotional entanglement. And don't worry, this is something I'm going to be expanding upon, so stick with me if you want to know what exactly I mean by emotional entanglement. We're going to be talking about why reacting to situations isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's not a downfall, right? And we're going to explore how you get to be human and have natural human reactions to situations that arise in your everyday life. Because let's face it, we all have our own stuff going on during the day, even if it's just the mundane things. And there are going to be times in the day where you tend to react to the situation. So we're going to be uncovering more about this and why reacting in and of itself isn't necessarily a bad thing. Right? Then we'll talk more about your creative frequency and how your creative frequency holds the key to moving forward without bypassing your truth. So stay tuned till the end, because I'm also going to be sharing a free gift that's going to help you shift your energy faster than 2 hours of journaling or endless mindset hacks could ever do for you. So let's get straight into this. Now, there's a school of thought that says that when you react to things in your life that you don't like, that are negative, they're not your preferred things or experiences or ways of being in life, that you unknowingly entangle yourself with frequencies that you don't necessarily prefer to have in your life. In other words, whatever you're focusing on grows, right? And because of that, a lot of the things that go wrong in your life are down to this. And this is something that's taught commonly out there in the mainstream. Now, even though it's correct, it's way more nuanced than that. And if we don't add the nuance, it can easily start leading to self-blame, shame, bypassing your real emotions. So you end up thinking things like, I need to fix myself, or there's something wrong with me, or I just need more healing. I just need more mindset work. I just need to get to the crux of this issue that I'm grappling with. But when you do all of that, you entangle yourself even more with the said experience or energy. Because when you're reacting with a strong emotional charge to something that you don't like, it does anchor you into that frequency temporarily. That part is correct. So for instance, you know that feeling when someone says or does something that hits exactly the nerve you've been trying to protect? Like when your toxic cousin or aunt or toxic uncle or toxic sibling, or insert whoever that person is in your life, because let's face it, we all have that one toxic person in our lives, right? Well, when that person walks into the party or gathering and they make a shady comment or have a dig about your life choices or about something that you did in front of everybody, and you feel your whole body tense, your heart starts to race, your jaw starts to clench, and you may smile through it, maybe you may even make a little joke about it, but later on that night, you're replaying it in your head, imagining what you should have said, and you spiral into old thoughts like, why do I always let people walk all over me? Why do I let them talk to me like this? Maybe I'm being too sensitive. This always happens to me. You know, these types of things. And that right there that spiral that you fall into right there, that's what it looks like when your nervous system grabs onto the moment and drags you back into an energy that's not even yours. You're not just reacting in that moment. What you're doing is you're anchoring into that frequency. But the way that you emote through that situation or that circumstance or that experience is natural, right? So how do you balance the two things? Because feeling that way in itself is not the real problem here. It only becomes a problem when you start to build your identity around it. Now, let me just pause there because I want to make something abundantly clear before we move on. This is not me saying that there is something wrong with you if you've ever done this before. It's not your fault. It's more because no one ever taught you how to feel a reaction without building an identity around it, without wrapping your whole identity into that emotion. And that's exactly why I'm sharing this episode and all the stuff that I'm going to be sharing with you, because I want you to stop blaming your sensitivity. I want you to stop blaming your emotions, your very human reactions, because that's a natural human response, okay? And what I want you to do instead is start understanding what your energy is actually trying to show you, what your emotions are actually trying to show you. So this isn't about bypassing. It's about learning how to move through that emotion without wrapping your whole identity around it, without becoming the embodiment of that emotion. What I'm inviting you into is learning how to allow your creative frequency to lead. And don't worry if you don't know what that term means. It's a term that I use a lot. I'm going to be explaining more about that as we go on through the episode, so stick around for that. But it's about letting your creative frequency lead so that your energy stops getting hijacked by your survival mode and your defense mechanisms, and it starts to flow in a way that actually can create change. Because if you know anything about me, you'll know that I say to my clients, if you've been a client before, you've probably already heard me say this a million times, you can be a hot mess and still manifest or create the change that you wish to create. You don't have to be perfectly healed. You don't have to completely eliminate that jealousy, that rage, that sadness, that grief, that victim energy even, right? There's obviously value in addressing all of those things, but you don't have to completely be rid of all of those things before you're allowed to get what you want in life. And this is what a lot of the self-help industry has you believe, is that you first have to be this perfect specimen of a human being and have a complete hold of your emotions and be completely enlightened, and then you get to have that. And if you're not manifesting the things that you want, it's because you haven't got to grips with your anger or your grief or, your perfectly normal human reactions to situations that, quite frankly, if you didn't have those emotions, then I would be questioning your humanity. So if there's one thing that you take away from this entire episode, let it be this. Your feelings aren't the problem. The problem is that you were never taught how to work with them. And this episode, what I'm sharing in here, is a reminder that your emotions are not the interruptions to your power. They are your way in. They're your gateway into your power. And this is the part that most people aren't getting. Where your attention goes, that's where you're anchoring your energy. But a feeling, a reaction, whether it's anger, whether it's sadness, grief, fear, whatever it is, isn't actually the problem. Getting stuck in that reaction or that emotion, spiraling into judgment, looping stories that feed resentment or despair without actually processing it, and then wrapping your whole identity around that thing. That's what deepens the entanglement to that experience. So there's a huge difference between feeling something fully and letting it move through you, because emotion is energy in motion, right? Versus feeding the reaction and building your identity around it. So, for example, when you start saying things like, I always get screwed over, I'm just unlucky, life is unfair, it never works out for me, it works for others but not for me, that is you building an identity around the range of emotions that you may have experienced that arise when you're faced with a given situation, and then getting entangled in more of those experiences. Does that make sense? Now, I'm about to tell you something that I used to hate when people would say, and I'm going to say it anyway, so just bear with me, hear me out, because I'm laying the context. So this isn't the spiritual bypassing bullshit that's thrown around in the mainstream, okay? But here's what I want to say to you. On a soul level, you actually planned for certain triggering experiences to happen. Not so you could bypass them, but so that you could alchemize them and get to the other side. So there could be that contrast of, I don't actually like this thing, and what's on the other side of it? How do I get to alchemize it and come on to the other side of it? It gives you that contrast, right? When you are experiencing something that you don't like, it gives you context. It gives you context of, I'm not enjoying this experience. What do I want instead? What's on the other side of it, right? Because on the other side of that experience, there is something beautiful. On the other side of it, there is medicine, and you get to alchemize it. But if you suppress your reactions because you're trying to be good vibes only or staying positive, a classic law of attraction misunderstanding, then you don't clear the entanglement. And all you're doing is stuffing it down, you're ignoring it, and it's like sweeping it under the rug and pretending it doesn't exist. But it's still there. And just because you're not acknowledging it, it doesn't mean it doesn't go away. Just because you keep slapping on a band-aid, doing your affirmations or saying how love and light you are, or being all forgiveness, or doing your gratitude lists and everything, but underneath you're feeling the rage, you're feeling the sadness or the pain or whatever it is, that energy is still there. It's still festering and magnetizing even more experiences from the unconscious vibration that you are trying to avoid with a band-aid therapy. So I know at this point, you're probably thinking, oh, Ras, that makes so much sense, but how the hell do you change this? And don't worry, I'm going to go through that with you. Because the real energetic freedom comes from feeling the trigger fully, and then processing or releasing that emotion, and then choosing differently, choosing again from a space of clarity, not just from your wounds, but from your scars. So you can have the wound, you can acknowledge that it hurts, right? You can acknowledge that you felt betrayed, that you were jealous even, or you feel frustrated or angry or whatever it is that you're feeling. You can feel whatever emotion is coming up for you. Because again, let me remind you, it is not the emotion that is the issue here. Remember, the emotions are a way to set the energy moving, to set the energy flowing. They're literally designed to get your energy moving. So it's okay to be angry or to be sad or disappointed or jealous or whatever it is. But feel it, name it, and release it. Then you can re-anchor it. And that is the mastery. Now, I know you're probably thinking, yeah, but how? Like, is it just as simple as, oh, I name the emotion, I feel angry, and now I release it, love and light? No, there's more to it than that. So this is where you now start to become the master of your emotions. Not the master of suppressing your emotions, right? Because that's not the aim here. It's not to suppress the reaction or the emotion. It's to become the alchemist of that energetic field. It's how you get to manage your own energy field, because you do have more power than you think you do. So now you're probably thinking, yeah, but what do I have to do, Ras? What is the real medicine here when life throws negativity at me? What am I supposed to do, right? So, for example, when you feel the anger and you allow it to move through your system, through crying, through shaking, through movement, through creativity or writing or whatever your outlet is, a safe outlet, a healthy outlet, okay? You move through that emotion without building a story around it. Crying is healthy. So when people say, oh, stop crying, stop being a baby about it, stop being such a victim, just get on with it, stop crying and do something about it, right? But your body is telling you that it needs a release. And that release for you comes through crying. Allow that. That release can happen through crying, the ugly crying, sobbing, whatever it takes, whatever form it takes, just cry it out. And sometimes it's not crying. Sometimes it's that you need to have a dance. You need to shake your body. Or you might need to go down to the gym and have a spin class or a punching the bag session, right? Whatever that looks like for you to get the release that your body is asking for. Now, in order for you to be able to do this, you have to be in tune with what your body is asking of you. Because your body has intelligence that your mind cannot ever arrive at. All right. So there's a reason. Let me give you this example, right? I used to see it all the time when I lived in Kenya. There would be this chase, okay, between a predator and a prey. And when the predator would chase the prey, if the prey escaped, there'd be this moment where the prey would start to shake uncontrollably. And I'd witness it during a lion kill, for example, because that's how I used to roll, right? In Kenya, on a Sunday when there was nothing to do, we would just go down to the local national park and watch a lion kill. And during a lion kill, chasing a gazelle or something, and if the gazelle escaped, it would start to shake. It would start to shake uncontrollably. And I'd watch it going, oh my God, this thing's having a seizure. Something wrong is going on. Something's happening. And then suddenly, after a few minutes of uncontrollable seizure-like shaking, the gazelle would just bound merrily off after a little while. And much later, when I started to understand the science behind what was happening, I realized that animals instinctively know something that humans seem to have forgotten. And that is that after a massive trauma, when you're going to be chased by a lion or another predator, the adrenaline is pumping and you're in trauma. And to release that trauma, they know they need to shake it out. They instinctively know that something needs to be done to discharge the energy from their body. And they do it. But we, as humans, we've forgotten how to do that. Now, it's not often that as humans, we're going to be faced with threats like lions chasing us, but think of the triggers that activate you in your life. All right? Maybe it's that one toxic relative that makes your heart race and your stomach churn as soon as you hear that they're coming round. And you know there's no way to avoid them. They're coming over and you're just like, oh my God, and that anxiety is building up, right? Or maybe it could be that frustration you feel when you've told your kid 1,000 times to stop doing the thing and they've already apologized and they promise they'll never do that thing again and they've sworn on Paw Patrol's good name and yet here they are doing it again, right? Or maybe it's that sweaty palmed anxiety of posting your art, your ideas, your truth, what you really want to say, that get ready with me video, whatever it is, online. But you just know that your lurker cousin or that resident BBC auntie that every one of us has is out there screenshotting every move to pass around the family WhatsApp group like it's community news. Yeah, that type of a thing. Or it could be when that dread creeps up when you see a, hey, how are you? Message from that one friend who only ever reaches out to you when they need something. Yeah? These are the kind of triggers. There could be that tight feeling in your chest when your boss emails you saying, just circling back for the 5th time in that week because he or she is expecting you to over-deliver again while Karen from accounting gets praised for showing up once with a coffee, right? It's that whole way that your body braces itself, it reacts when the auntie squad at the temple or the family wedding pulls you aside with the, their normal FAQ questions. why aren't you married yet? And if you're married, why haven't you had a baby yet? And if you have had a baby, when are you having another baby? Or if all else fails, why are you doing that healing thing? Why aren't you sticking to your good job, like your pharmacy? Why aren't you doing the respectable thing? Why are you doing things so differently from everyone, right? You get what I mean? Those are the threats. And at this point, I find myself questioning whether I'd rather take my chances with a lion. At least the lion's intentions are clear. But joking aside, these are the modern predators your nervous system is still trying to survive. And the trouble is, because we've been conditioned to be the good little brown girl who stays calm, is respectful, doesn't make a scene, we never discharge that energy. And then to layer on top of that, the self-development industry is telling you to just do things like be more positive, work on your mindset, focus your energy on what you want, not your fears, forgive it and let go. Don't give your power away by reacting. Stay high vibe no matter what, positive vibes only. Reach for higher feeling emotions so you can raise your vibration. And so you're taught to just bury it all under the carpet because out of sight, out of mind. And somehow everything will be fine if you do that. But the thing is, how can you love and light your way through a nervous system that's been taught to always brace and prepare for betrayal? You can't gratitude journal your way out of generational silence, all right? You cannot raise your vibration when your energy is still tangled in old survival codes that may not even be yours to begin with. Because if you try that approach, the mainstream approach, all that happens is that you just end up carrying it quietly, painfully, invisibly, until it leaks out in exhaustion, in anxiety, in rage that you can't explain, dreams that you can't start or accomplish, or relationships that just drain you until you're dry. Real healing doesn't ask you to bypass your body's truth. It asks you to listen, to honor, to move with, not against. That's what the real healing is. Real healing is you being able to identify the pattern that you're stuck in during your everyday mundane moments in life. You know, when your kid isn't doing what you ask them to do, when your manager is sending you emails to do things and over-deliver but refuses to give you anything in return, or when you're meeting up with a blind date for the millionth time and it's clear that you're just not connecting. And then you spiral, and then you get into that emotional entanglement that you usually get into, the pattern, the habituated pattern that you have learned that your nervous system is still running on, this old program that it's still running in the background, even though you've done all the mindset work and the healing and, you know, the manifesting and all of it. The real healing happens in those tiny little daily moments in your life where you're able to interrupt those patterns. Because once you're able to identify what the pattern is, you can then interrupt the pattern. And then you can start intentionally creating new patterns. But the real healing happens in those tiny little moments, not when you're sitting there with 2 hours of uninterrupted silent time during meditation, or on the 3-day workshop that you take on manifesting or attracting your dream soulmate. Because in those situations, the environment is beautiful. You're surrounded by people who are doing their inner work and they are more positive, and it's easy to get swept up in that energy. But what happens when you come back to the real world, when you're back in the family dynamic with that one toxic member of the family who makes it hell for everybody, and you can't escape them, you can't just sever ties, not always. Or when you're in your work environment, you can't afford to give up your job, but you have to work with this co-worker. And so this is what I'm talking about when I talk about your creative frequency. Your creative frequency knows exactly how to do all of this. It knows exactly how to listen to you, to honor you, to move with, not against your body's truth. Your creative frequency is the part of you that already knows how to turn the grief into power, or the rage into movement, or the longing into momentum, right? It's the part of you that's been buried under all of those affirmations, under all of the good vibes only scripts, under all the times that you've been told to be the good girl, to be quiet, to wait your turn. But your energy was never meant to behave. It was meant to lead. And it's still there, still lives within you, that stubborn, silent, brilliant, alive energy. And it's waiting for you to stop gaslighting yourself and let it do what it was designed to do. And if you don't know what your creative frequency is, I've got something for you as always. I have a 90-second quiz you can take to find out exactly what your creative frequency is and where your energy naturally tends to leak. And I also, along with that, have a mini activation to help you bring your creative frequency back online. So go ahead, take the quiz, then hit reply to the email that you get, or DM me on Instagram and let me know what type you are and what you struggle most with as that type. I love hearing your stories and connecting with brilliant souls doing this work. So come and say hi. Don't just take the quiz and ghost me. I genuinely love to cheer you on. And I'll share all the links in the show notes as usual, so you'll find them all there. But getting back to the emotions, because you're probably thinking, this is all great, Ras, but how on earth do we navigate? I'm still not clear on how to navigate those emotions or reactions. And don't worry, I'm not going to leave you hanging. So the key to move through those emotions is do what the animals do, right? What your body is designed to do. Listen to your body. Maybe it's crying, maybe it's shaking, maybe it's dancing or moving, or maybe it's creating a piece of artwork, writing, doing your breath work, whatever your jam is. But here's the key thing that you need to know along with that. Without building a story behind it. You literally process that emotion. You name it, okay? You acknowledge it. You don't bury it under the carpet. You actually say it, like say out loud, hey, I feel jealous of that person. I really want what they want and I'm not happy because I've been working so goddamn hard and I know I've worked twice as hard as them and they've just had it handed to them on a golden platter without even lifting a finger. And I'm jealous of that. Like, name it. I envy that person. I'm coveting what they have. You name the energy. You name the emotion. But what you don't do is you don't ignore it. You don't think, oh, I'm going to love and light my way out of this. Or no, good people aren't jealous. They don't covet what other people have. I'm a good person. I'm love and light. You don't just bury it under the sand like that. And then you don't build your identity around it. And that is how you purify your energy faster. So you're acknowledging that I'm jealous in this example. I'm jealous of that person, what they have. And I acknowledge that. And then do something about it. Like, what are you going to do to process it? And maybe in that moment, it's like, I'm just going to go down to the gym and have a yoga session. Or I'm just going to have a swim. Or I just need to walk this out. I need to go in nature, smell some flowers, and walk this out to process this emotion. And maybe it's, I'm going to create a piece of artwork or a poem that expresses my feelings, right? And then you go and do all of that. But then what you're not doing after you've done all of that is shaming yourself or berating yourself. Oh, I'm a jealous person. Oh, nothing ever happens for me. Look at me. I try so hard. I work so hard. No one ever acknowledges me. I try so hard. I know I worked twice as hard as that person who the success is coming to so easily. I always do this. Oh my gosh. This is it. You see? Throughout my whole life, I work twice as hard as all of them, and I'm not half as good as them. I don't have half as much success. I'm just unlucky. It just never works out for me. That is when you start to build your entire identity, because what you're doing in that moment, and it's a habituated response, so it may take a little bit of practice for you to catch yourself in that pattern, but I promise you, when you start to become more aware of these little narratives that are running in your head, or these little stories that live in your head rent free, that's when you can start to change it. Because you cannot change what you do not acknowledge. You cannot change what you don't know. So the first step is actually identifying what it is and then catching yourself in the pattern of, oh my God, I'm doing that thing where I'm having a reaction, a normal human reaction to this situation. But now I'm going through all the archives of the stories in my head to find evidence of where this is true in my life. And now I'm going to build my entire identity around that. Does that make sense? So here's what you literally do, the entire process. You name the emotion. You acknowledge what it is. You acknowledge that you have that emotion. You say to yourself, it's okay for me to have this emotion. It's a perfectly normal reaction to the given situation. You don't bury it under the carpet and pretend it's not there and love and light your way out of it, or rush to your gratitude journal to write 3 things that you're grateful for because you're trying to ignore what it is you're actually feeling. Now, am I saying you never do a gratitude journal? No, I'm saying that whatever you do that mainstream teaches you to do, check in with the energy with which you are initiating that thing. So if I'm initiating my sitting down and journaling, there's nothing wrong with journaling. It's the energy with which you're doing it. So if you're sitting down with the intention of trying to distract yourself from what it is that you're actually feeling, so you bury it under the carpet and then it just goes unacknowledged, versus I'm going to be journaling on what it is I'm feeling. I want to name this emotion and I want to rid myself of any shame spirals that I spin in as a result of having this emotion because of what I've been taught by my culture, by being taught by the healing industry, being taught by patriarchy, or whatever it is that you've been taught by. And then the final step to the whole process is that you do not build your identity around that thing. Okay? And that is how you get to purify your energy frequency faster. That's how you're able to process that emotional wave that you have to ride and ride that emotional wave quicker. That's how you get to unhook from that lower energy field without bypassing your humanity. And so what happens is that you become the eye of the storm, right? You're like, imagine like a little hurricane going round and round and round and round. You're in the center, the eye of the storm. That part where you can witness all the chaos. You can feel all the rage or all the emotions around you. You can feel the edge of that whirl of energy, right? And you're still at peace, untouched, undamaged, because you're in the eye of the storm. You're not captured within the destructive path of that storm. Does that make sense? So yeah, while it's true that the more you pay energy and attention and react to the things you don't like in life, the more entangled you become with them. And then that becomes a cycle of just pulling in more and more of that energy. Just like when you're watching the news, the constant shit show that they're reporting, right? And I'm not saying don't ever watch the news. I'm just giving you an example for context here. You get to choose whether you want to watch the news or not. That's entirely up to you. But what I'm saying is, like, when you're watching that constant shit show that they're always reporting and you sit there and you react to it emotionally, you start to create more of that energy. Or when someone toxic in your family comes in and you start to react to their behavior, or you react to the behavior of the others around you who maybe enable that toxic person, then you're anchoring into that and entangling yourself into those unwanted frequencies. If and only if you're not processing your emotions. And if and only if you're not acknowledging that this is making me feel a certain way, and then doing the work to bring it to your cognitive awareness so that you can interrupt that pattern and choose a different habit. And then you start to break down those old habituated responses to intentionally create new pathways and new responses. All right? Because when that happens through habituated patterns, you start saying things like, this is like an autoresponder, right? You start saying things like, see, I'm invisible. Nobody sees me. Nobody cares about me. This world is a dangerous place. It just doesn't happen for me. And that becomes the story in your mind that loops on repeat. And eventually you say it enough times, you're going to start believing that about yourself. It becomes a part of your identity, of who you are, because you've created an anchor into that identity where your suppression creates a deeper and hidden entanglement to that. It becomes familiar ground, right? That's what it is. So your nervous system starts to think that it's actually safer to be in that energy, whether it's anger or jealousy or feeling not enough or not good enough or whatever it may be for you, than to be free of all that and to actually be in your power and to know your worth and to be confident in yourself, whatever it is that you want on the flip side of it, right? Because it feels more familiar. And so it feels safer to the nervous system. And what we're trying to do here is we're trying to attune our nervous systems back into a feeling of internal safety so that it's not trying to source safety from an outside source, right? From your parents or your siblings or your manager or your clients or whoever else might be externally. But instead you start to source that safety within yourself, because the truth is no one can make you feel safe. You make yourself feel safe. There's no one on planet Earth that's going to actually make you feel safe. I know, like, we have this idealized, romanticized version that some knight in shining armor is going to come and everything's going to be okay because they're going to carry me off and I'll feel safe and they'll be my defender when other people attack me. And let's just think about that for a second. How many people do you have in your life who actually do that for you? Who actually stand up for you? And I'm talking about consistently when you need them to. I'm willing to bet that there's probably no one who does that for you on a consistent basis whenever you need. And the reason for that is because they're not meant to. You are meant to create that internal safety for yourself. You do not rely on others to create that for you. And so through doing this work, that's exactly what we're doing. We're creating that internal safety. It's that true energetic mastery without moving through that reaction and identifying with it. Because we know at this point, right, that reacting isn't wrong. It's human. We're emotional beings. That's literally what we're wired to do. Your emotions aren't mistakes. They're actually your signs from the universe that's telling you something's going on here, something's happening here. Here's a different portal of possibility that you can access. This is a quantum leap that you can take directly that's going to shortcut and collapse time into the reality you really want to be experiencing. And what you're doing inadvertently is you're closing the door on that portal. And then you're wondering why your stuff isn't showing up. Okay? So to summarize, your emotions mean that you are a breathing, pulsing human miracle that's trying to survive a world that keeps gaslighting your sensitivity. All right? So anywhere that you have bought into this life, from the culture, from self-development, from well-intentioned family, friends, or relatives, or even the not so well-intentioned ones, right? Drop it now. Return that to sender. Ignore it. Because we're not going to live by those lies anymore. All right? Your emotions mean that you are a human being. You're not screwing up your life because you have feelings, all right? So whoever sold you that lie, I hope they step on a Lego. Kidding, not kidding. But listen, like, let me put it into a different context, right? Imagine being in a relationship where the other person is devoid of emotion. How fun would that be? Do you think that would be a really healthy relationship? Would you love to spend time with that person and have intimacy and connection with that individual, someone who's completely devoid of any emotion? Probably not, right? So consider that as you start to build up that relationship with yourself, with your creative frequency, with your relationship to God or the universe, with your relationship to your intuition, to your power or your creativity with your gifts and your talents that will actually create the change that you are seeking in your life. Your creative frequency doesn't rise when you try to suppress your humanity, okay? It was built to move that energy, not to silence it. So your emotions are actually the fuel to the way that you uniquely create or manifest your visions into this world. You only stay stuck when you treat your feelings like they're some kind of failure instead of the fuel that they actually are. So if any of this has resonated with you, it's landed with you, and you've recognized yourself in any of this, go take the goddamn quiz. It'll all make more sense when you do, because you'll see exactly how to start processing those emotions in a healthy way. That doesn't take 2-hour blocks at the crack of dawn while you light your candles and meditate in total silence with your crystals, and then you do another 2 hours of journaling before getting to the mindset work. Because who's got time for that? I know I don't. And if you do, kudos to you. And I'm low-key jealous of anyone who has the time and the silence to be able to do all of that. I really wish I had the same, but I don't. I'm busy. I've got stuff to do. And I know many of my clients and many of my listeners are the same as me. We don't have that privilege. So if you've got 1,000,001 things going on at any one time, you may not have the luxury of the 1 hour or more blocks. Go take the quiz. Go do the activation and watch how fast your energy starts clearing the crap that's been clogging your flow. And please share it with people. Share it with your sisters, your cousins, your group chat, the ones you like, the ones you care about. Hell, why just limit it to the people that you actually like? Go share it with your enemies. Go share it with the people who love to sabotage you and the lurkers who stalk your socials. Maybe it will help them all to focus on their own lives for once instead of running family intelligence operations or operations to sabotage all your plans and happiness, right? And then come find me on Instagram. DM me your type, what you get. Tell me your biggest aha moments, or just come say hi. I love hearing from you. I'll share all the links to my Instagram and the links to the quiz in the show notes. But for now, we've come up to the end of this episode. It's been so much fun recording this. I hope you've got so much value from this. And until next time, happy creating.